It has been honestly one hell of a year, and I think we're all feeling it. I think whether you live in the US or not, every country is being hit by this collective energy.
To this very unique period in time, 2027, 2025, 2026, 2027. And then that unique configuration that I've been talking about starts to break up. Saturn's already moved on, Uranus moves faster than Neptune and Pluto, and this mini triangle, as we've called it, starts to break up. So these seem to be the critical years of accelerated evolution, concentrated, accelerated evolution. And of course, our evolution goes on forever, and our evolution isn't determined by calendar years. But nevertheless, these 3 years have different qualities, certainly as I'm looking at it astrologically. And so we had to get together and dig deeper into 2026, because we're coming to the end of 2025, but it's going to be even faster next year. We are really starting to see the ending of the old world, things collapsing, and that's going to continue and accelerate through 2026 as well.
So using the gene keys, which is using similar mapping to the human design system, as I said, if you know that system, one of the ways that the founder of Human Design, Ra, looked at global cycles, and he created a really interesting way of mapping those global cycles, and it sort of maps this huge grand cycle that we talk about, the session of the equinox and these yugas that also we can get into later. But it's essentially it's a way of looking right back 16,000 BC. That particular round begins, and it's coming towards its sort of finale now. And with the year 2027 is a pivotal point, because it's a shifting of one of these major, what Ra called cogs and gears. And what's so interesting about that is that when they shift, it's quite an instantaneous event, right? So even though in human history we see it gradually, it means that when the gear shifts to another archetype, or in this case another gene key, so it shifts into gene key 55, which is the key of freedom itself, then the old energy is literally not receiving any fuel anymore. So because all the fuel is going into the new flowers, the new buds that are kind of then coming out. So that's why I've coined 2026 the year of the closing door, because it's the very last blast of that old energy. By the time it gets to 2027, and early 2027, it's actually all dried up. So all the nutrition for the, if you like, for the old paradigm is drying up in this next year, whilst the new shoots are appearing at the same time. Ra called this the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is a delightful mythic name, because the ashes, the phoenix obviously rises up out of the ashes of the old. And so 2026 is the last chance, in a way, of the old energy to kind of have any say in anything. And so that has a lot of bearing for us as individuals, because it means that if we've got any unprocessed stuff lying around, then 2026 is an amazing year to kind of get it dealt with. Anything. So
the 2026 timeline jump is upon us. The wind-up of the 2025 timeline is happening right now. And we're in this weird place in between the two timelines, a gap between two realities. And it's going to feel to you like you're in no man's land. And it's going to feel to you like there's this weird, misty, foggy, hazy in-between that you can't make sense of. And it's going to be very tempting in that in-between place to want to run away, to hide, and really to your own detriment to distract yourself. So we're going to talk about how to navigate the in-between. But why is there an in-between? Why is there a new timeline? Let's start at the beginning. 2012 is the beginning of the story. Because it was in 2012 that the new directive came in, and the directive was Ascension is on the cards. Ascension is humanity's next step. Whether one person ascended or whether we all ascended wasn't then known, but it was then possible. And that was because of massive galactic intervention. The pre-2012 experience was 1 year, just melted into the next. It was like this bleed through of 1 year into another, into another. There was no massive timeline jumps. And the reason why is because conscious evolution wasn't happening. It wasn't called for. It wasn't possible because we were living very much under the tight, rigid structure of the false matrix, where growth certainly did not happen. In fact, the opposite of growth happened. Stagnancy happened. Now, the 2025 timeline is ending, and it's ending rapidly, and it's part of a succession of timelines that began in 2012. And each one, think of it kind of like a rung in a ladder, each one paced a little bit further. So the jump gets a little bit bigger, and that's just a metaphorical way of visualizing the fact that every year is bringing to us not just a new frequency, but a higher frequency. And there's two reasons why. The first is the universe is clever, because the universe knows what happens on reason number two, and that is when humanity collectively goes into a mindset, which we do every January. The collective mindset is, hey, it's a new beginning. So if ever there was a time that universally a new frequency was going to be ushered in, yeah, January is it. But there's this massive gap in frequency. So imagine that the rungs of the ladder paced out a little bit further every year, the frequency jump a little bit bigger every year. So from a world pre-2012 where 1 year was the same as the next, it was just called something else, to a place where we're shifting realms. And the head hasn't yet caught up, which is fine. It's not meant to. This is an energetic experience, but at the energetic level, what you will go through is, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm able, capable. I don't know if there's anything to jump into, because it feels kind of like there's nothing there. And if you do feel something, it's going to feel that misty, weird, kind of nothing makes sense. That place that you want to run away from. That place that you want to distract yourself from. Because essentially those are the two choices that we have right now. It's not even go forward, it's fly forward, or it's limbo, which is like an unplug. And it's a very unhealthy unplug. I'm not talking about unplug and go rest. I'm talking about disconnect, disengage, go offline. Back to the timeline. Why is the 2025 timeline ending so abruptly? Because it is. And we were navigating 2025 as if we had our whole lives to complete the 2025 assignment, which was a circular assignment. It was completion of all loose ends. And it was a very difficult timeline because it was so tedious. There wasn't forward movement, and there wasn't momentum either. We would have felt very stuck, and we would have felt very much like we were chasing our own tail or going around in circles, not getting anywhere. But we felt like we had the whole of forever to not get anywhere, except the memo was, at best, you've got 10 months, January to October of 2025. We've navigated that period. So where we are right now is where the 2025 timeline starts to wind down. But we get a little bit wobbly because the 2026 timeline isn't solid yet.
Because we have, for the first time since the early 20s, we have Uranus making a trine, that's a equilateral, 2 points on an equilateral triangle, Uranus making a trine with Pluto. And if you go back to the early 20s, it was the roaring 20s. Everything was great. Everything was expansive. Of course, it was followed up, by a whole lot of nastiness, both, in, fascist governments and, in Russia, in Italy, in Germany, and the depression and the stock market crash in the United States. But the Uranus-Pluto trine in 1921 was amazing. It was a fantastic period of time. So we now have Uranus and Pluto moving into a trine, but different from then, we have Saturn and Neptune, that's reality and imagination, coming together at a point that is exactly tied into that triangle, making 3 points on a 6-pointed star. And by July of next year, Jupiter comes in and makes a 4th point on that 6-pointed star. And then for a day, the moon comes in and makes a 5th point on that 6-pointed star. And there's no astrologer alive who's ever seen or used a computer to be able to reproduce this pattern. And what will happen? I don't know, but I'm down for it. And I do believe that what we do today, tomorrow, next week, next month, will have immediate ramifications by next February when Saturn and Neptune come together exactly. And then by next July, when Uranus and Pluto make that exact triangle with Neptune right at the middle and Jupiter also involved. So I think that that's why this is a setup for what's happening. And by the time we get to 2027, I think that things are going to be set in stone in a way that they're not right now. Right now, even though we might feel overwhelmed and divided, and I think that's part of the strategy, conscious or not, by those in power. And again, here I think it's important to say, I don't care where anyone falls on which side of almost any issue. We have to understand that whether you're in the United States a Democrat or a Republican or pro-life or pro-abort, or whatever the dividing lines, whether you're this race or that race, that's all in the past. We have to, like, the transformation that needs to occur is that we either need to decide that we're part of a community that's going to evolve and love, or we're part of a community that's going to be so locked in fear that we're going to engage in physical disruption and or harm until none of us have what we want. You know, it's not a matter of what physical attributes or color of your skin or religion you practice. It's not a matter of what you believe about this or that. It's a matter of, do you believe that we can either exist, back to old MacDonald's farm, can we exist on the same farm? And I'll let you have your belief, you let me have my belief. We can talk about it, but let's talk about it as if we're going toward the same concept of trying to make a world in which we can live in. Because if we can't get along with each other, we're not going to be able to. And right now, the people on the top are doing everything they can to overwhelm us and confuse us and make us feel like there's someone who is threatening our existence, whether it's xenophobia or racism or beliefs about this or that, whatever it is, you know, and in some way, the numbers will outweigh that, you know, that weighted heaviness of those right now who are defining and curating our reality. And it's a frightening thing to stand up to, but humanity has done it before, but it's never done it in this environment where there is so much at stake for the entire planet. I mean, this has been done in little pockets, whether it's been, you know, in France or Spain in the 1400s, or whether it was, you know, in this country or that area with this conqueror or that person. Right now, it's happening globally because the communication being instantaneous has changed the nature of astrology, because feedback is occurring at a very near instantaneous level. Whereas if something happens on the other side of the world, you know about it in a few minutes. Used to be like you could live and die and never know that this happened or that happened on the other side of the world, or for that matter, even a couple hundred miles away. It was just very insular. So the energy has changed, and we can turn this around on a dime. I mean, that's an American expression. I don't think you have dimes in Australia. But a dime is the smallest coin. Not value-wise, but in size, meaning that that things can happen so quickly that we can be going so fast this way, and in a second turn around and go that way. And that's kind of what needs to happen. It's obvious pretty much to everyone who's paying attention, I don't care what your beliefs are, that we can't sustain living in this way. It can be turbulent, and change doesn't happen without turbulence. there's there's that old story, which actually turns out to be apocryphal. I don't really know that this is true, but so many people know that if you put, or they think they know, that if you put a frog in warm water and heat it up gradually, the frog will become lethargic and boil to death. Whereas if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll do everything it can to struggle and jump out. I'm not sure from what I've read research on this that that's actually true, but the metaphor works because I think that the way that the planet had been going, we were like frogs in warm water that we were just nonchalant and were eventually going to boil ourselves to death without even really being aware. And yet, over the past handful of years or so, there's been so much in our face and so much destruction and so much eradication or suppression of knowledge, of truth. And when I say of knowledge, I mean even paving over the digs in Turkey on these ancient cities so that to prevent us from finding out what's really there. I mean, there's suppression every which way, whether it's suppression on a governmental level of UFOs or UAPs, or suppression psychologically, or I mean, there's things going on in every different direction. And I guess what I'm saying is that we are at a point where it feels like we've been thrown into boiling water, and people are upset about it. And yet they're not sure what to do because the water is so vast and it's boiling, and it's almost like there's no apparent way out. But we're humans. We'll either figure out a way out, and it may be ultimately better that we're in this precarious position and need to, under dire emergency, need to figure out a way out versus just slowly taking another decade or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 saying, yeah, things are getting better, and in fact boiling to death. Now that may be an overdramatic way of looking at it, but
any advice on how to navigate this time coming up to the best of our abilities?
Yeah, it's my one-liner forever. Think cosmically, act locally. Do whatever you can to expand your awareness, because that's the one thing that we can change. It's Buddhism 101, whether you're a Buddhist or not. When you change your awareness, when you alter your perspective, when you widen your perspective, you have more choices. So it's important that we're always thinking cosmically, not just globally, but opening our minds to whatever we thought we didn't know, to whatever we knew was impossible, just staying open and opening our minds, and then acting locally. What does that mean? Well, for someone, it means being in politics. For someone else, it means standing with a protest sign. For someone else, it means writing a letter to a government official. For someone else, it means loving their family. For someone else, it means running a business consciously that helps people support themselves. It means different things to everyone. And what you do and what I do and what someone else does is not necessarily going to be the same thing. So I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you that if you continually open your mind and think more cosmically and widen your perspective, and then act locally. Help the person who has 2 packages hold the door open and smile at them. It's the more local we react. It's the idea of the butterfly flapping its wings off, the coast in the China Sea can create a weather pattern 10 years later on the other side of the world. We don't know how what we do in unconsciousness impacts the future. But if we act consciously, and we act as the Dalai Lama would say when asked, what is your religion? He said, my religion is kindness. And if we can all just take that step and get out of our bullshit belief systems, our belief that we know what's real and you don't. And if we can just open up enough to create dialogue where there was one, we'll all learn a little more. We'll get along with each other. Think cosmically, act locally. That's it. I don't know what else to say. And there's no specific advice because you are doing what you're doing here as part of your action. What you're doing is opening people up to new ways of looking at things and thinking about things. But not everyone has an audience like you do, or like I might, so other people can only do that by going to a holiday gathering with their family, and instead of yelling and cursing at the person who has a view that is obviously wrong from your perspective, whichever side of whatever issue you're on, instead be open and say, can you tell me how you got there? I really want to understand, I really want to understand why you think what you think. And maybe ultimately I can explain to you why I think what I think, not because I'm trying to convince you to think like me or be like me, but because if we can understand each other, we can sit here at this holiday meal and actually love each other rather than creating the mess that we seem to be perpetuating.
In 1968, almost every American knew what these were: hippies. A few of the estimated 16 million cultural rebels who abandoned 1950s notions about how life in America should be lived. And by 1968, almost everyone in America knew what these people were too: student protesters, activists, part of a small but vocal group of political rebels who were fighting not only to end a war, but to transform, even dismantle, the American system.
It's like a remediation. It's like the ability to make something right that we didn't get right before. And I think that what is it that we're trying to make right? Well, Pisces is the sign of metaphysical. It's the sign of compassion. It's the sign of, I can think of is Pisces George Harrison, singing that we're all Pisces fish swimming in the, with the sea flowing through each of us. We all have the same ocean or the same Piscean waters flowing through us. The illusion that the Amrit Sandhu crystal is a different crystal than the Rick Levine crystal. Well, apparently, if we're looking at crystals, meaning that we are just organic crystals grown in a supersaturated solution of amniotic proteins, and we're self-aware, but we're still crystalline forms. And the Amrit crystal is different from the Rick crystal, but we still have the same waters of Pisces flowing through both of us. And so, with the nodal axis in Virgo and Pisces, and with the condensation of Saturn and Neptune, both in Pisces, I think we're getting another shot, another bit to be aware that what we thought was real may not be the only thing, that what we think of as real often is what limits us from seeing the truth that may be beyond that. And so I'm hopeful. I'm not a blind optimist, because we got a lot of stuff to process if we're going to get through this. But I think that people are being, it's kind of like, like having a dog that, pees or poops in the house, and rather than smacking the dog or hurting them or beating them up, just simply bringing their nose close to it and saying, no, you can't do this. This is not okay. It's like we're basically, we have an opportunity to alter our awareness about things that are not okay. Will we pull it off?
The 2026 timeline, it is so undealt with, it is so unknown, it's so foreign, and because of that, it feels far away and not solid, but it is. The answer is for you to slow down, and isn't that just a perfect irony? That in order to speed up and catch the moving train that is the timeline, you have to slow right down. That's how you get on. The breath of stillness that breathes you into presence is the most important breath you're going to take. The most important breath of your entire life is that breath that breathes you into presence, and may every breath breathe you into more and more presence, more and more connection, more and more stillness, because that is how you navigate. Now, you don't need to feel guilty for leaving loved ones behind. And I want to explain exactly what this means, because You're not technically leaving anybody behind, but it will feel that way. It's going to feel to you like you're betraying people. Maybe humanity, maybe your friends, loved ones, or family. Because why? You're not energetically going to be standing next to them, waiting with them, waiting for them to catch up. Instead, you're blazing your trail of light, which is imperative, because that trail of light is exactly what others need in order to have a pathway illuminated that they can follow. Your trail of light that you're meant to blaze is waiting for you to damn well blaze that trail, not to sit down with your bum planted, waiting for everybody else to catch up and bemoaning the fact that they can't wake up the way that you have. That's not your job. That's you in limbo. The truth is that your flight forward is not you leaving them, it is you leaving them a trail so that they can follow it. And this is something you have to come to terms with. You're leaving no one behind. You're fulfilling your role. You're a timeline leader. Because for heaven's sakes, who else is going to be watching a video on Kerry Kay's channel on timeline jumping and the gap between realities, the space between timelines? It's going to be you because you're a timeline leader. And that also explains why you have felt so alone and abandoned and forgotten and unaided and unsupported, because you're imagining that there should be other human beings that you can follow because you don't realize that you're the one that other people are following, at least energetically. And that's all it takes, is for enough of us to energetically make the timeline jump in order to send the unspoken message to the collective, oh guys, it's safe. Oh guys, it's okay. So here's a funny visual that I want to give you. Imagine that the timeline is almost like a travelator, actually. Since we're going with visuals, I would say that's a pretty good one. But imagine that the travelator or the floor of the timeline is moving and it is water-based. So you can't treat that water back. Meaning, so imagine a water-based travelator. It's like a crystalline consciousness, a liquid crystal. That's the water in the timeline. And you can't turn back. Which means that there's only two things that are viable, and that's go forward, which ultimately is actually fly forward. Because once you hit that 2026 timeline, it's going to feel like, oh my God, my feet aren't even taking steps. I'm just flying. Energetically, that's exactly what 2026 feels like. And guess what's going to happen to the control freaks among us? We're going to go, oh no, I'm out. I can't do this, but you can. And you're meant to. And this is what we're doing here in this in-between place.
Because you want to, when you get to 2027, you want to be able to look back and go, wow, 2026 was one hell of a year. That was a very difficult year for the planet, because I suspect it will be. And I think many of us do. And so you might be one of the people that says, well, I had a brilliant year because at the beginning of the year, I made this massive commitment to my own inner process. And I now, I wasn't so fazed by everything that was going on out there. And I stayed true to this process and this program because the door was closing. The door on that old energy and that old paradigm was closing. And I sucked out every part of my own shadow process while it was closing. And now I'm ready for the new. When I hit 2027, we don't know what that new energy will look like. We just know that that's when the kind of all the energy starts pouring into the new shoots, into the new consciousness, and the old will then, the old ways, the old paradigms, the old patriarchal systems, will then start to decline much more quickly because there's no juice left. There's no inner juice left in the programming. So that could be quite frightening, for the mass consciousness, because you start to lose the things that you've taken for granted for a long time. They start to kind of not always be there, and that might be a process that lasts, decades even. So the decline is going to speed up but at the same time sows the awakening. So that's why I'm finding 2026 as a really important year, that you get clear in yourself. What is the commitment that I need to make? And how can I be really decisive right from the beginning and set your trajectory clear from your heart, from your body, so that you have an amazing year. And also that's going to be part of that journey is going to be us supporting each other, whatever does happen on the outside, and coming together in intimacy and in community to support each other, so that we remind each other we need not be freaked out by whatever's going on outside. We can act. This is part of the closing of the door, and we need to stay focused on the mission that we made the commitment to right at the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful to hear you speak of this, Richard, because I've been talking about this in my own language of saying that anything that is not born of love is going to crack and crumble right now, because we're moving to this higher frequency of love, and all these very high frequency light codes that are coming in from our sun and the galactic core, etc. It is changing our biology, I believe. It's changed, and you've talked about this as well, with Pluto moving into Gate 41 on January the 30th this year, and how that was triggering, I think, methionine. Methionine, which is going to create a mutation across all species, a genetic mutation across all species, I remember you saying. So we're changing biologically, we're changing in consciousness, I think, very rapidly. And so, yes, anything of low frequency is going to crumble, and the crumbling is going to accelerate from this point on. And so we're no longer in rehearsal. That was the few months in the summer, Northern Hemisphere, winter in the Southern Hemisphere. That was our rehearsal. We're now in the stage of metamorphosis, this quiet wintertime Northern Hemisphere. But from early next year, and I can quote specific dates, it's gonna be go time. And so this is the time to choose, to decide, to set your vision. Don't just hope. Hope is a wobble. But as Richard said, absolutely commit to the vision of the higher self that you want to become. Because there's no more rehearsal time now. We're in it, and it's going to move very fast. The energy next year is going to be even faster than this year, and 2027 even faster again. It's not slowing down anytime soon. So this is the time. There's no more wobble time. This is the time to commit. So get very clear. If you meditate on who is the best self I can be, who is my highest self, what steps can I take to make that dream become real? Because the symbolism astrologically, as of the 20th of February next year, is about making real the dream and taking action on it, taking action steps from that point on. So we're absolutely in this crucible of change, and it's so interesting that Richard, from his different discipline and modality, is seeing exactly what I'm seeing astrologically. So yes, the old will continue to crumble, but please don't give it any attention. Just let it go. Just don't energize the old life support system, because that isn't going to. Because what people tend to do is get caught up in the drama, pour energy into what they absolutely don't want, and then blame it for giving them a hard time. We are actually in a vicious circle with that. So really commit to the best you can possibly be. And I think that's thrilling. I think, as I understand it, this lifetime is the only lifetime where we're going to move from a kind of regular 3D being to being able to achieve much higher dimensions within this one lifetime. But we have to commit to it. And this is our kind of one-time shot at it, as it were. So it's very exciting, it's very exhilarating, but it's going to take the mastery of our thinking, the mastery of our state of being. And I would also add that have a positive lens, have a very positive lens on how you expect this to go. This is going to be great. It's going to be fabulous. Think of that mantra that Cynthia Sue Larson was telling us about, which is, how good can it get? Make that your rolling mantra day to day. How good can it get? And whether it's a challenging thing or a wonderful thing, how good can it get? Because that's going to shift up your frequency every time you roll that around your head.
That's what you're going to.
That's
you're going to transmute rather than throw out. You're going to let them go, and you're going to watch those patterns, and you're going to see that there's an incredible opportunity for alchemy to take place. And it'll be easier than it ever has been before because you're in harmony with the cosmic divine currents that are moving through all of us. So you're going to find it easier to let go of these shadow patterns, and you're going to find it easier, to be less provoked by whatever it is, the news headlines or the left or the right or the whatever it is that really provokes you sometimes and winds you up because we're human. You'll find it easier to let go of that because on the inside, you'll be giving your energy to a heightened state of consciousness, wherever your cities are. So we're going to be focusing a lot of our attention on our Buddha nature. And we're doing a real focus on embodiment, on embodying heightened states of consciousness in the body, right? Because that's in the biology, feeling them in the body, so that it's not just a head in the clouds idea. It's actually something, so if we use a word like ecstasy, or we use a word like rapture, or these are some of the names of the city, or celebration, we're actually embodying those principles in our lives. And so that's why you're right, Pam, it can be an amazing year when we start to embody those principles, but not at the expense of bypassing the shadows. That's part of the journey, right? So it's a very juicy year in terms of us needing to ground higher frequencies down into the form, into the body. And that means we're going to need a kind of discipline that I would say in 2026. If you're not 100% in that, then your energy is leaking somewhere in your life. And you either got to address it powerfully and quickly, or you need to let it go. What you don't want is a halfway house. So you've got to be really decisive and clear in your heart about what's good for you and what's right for you, because you don't want entropy. 2027, which is the year of the cosmic change, prophesied from many, for a long time through the human design and gene keys. This is the year the dragonfly takes to the air. And for the first time, we experience the lift of the higher consciousness. Not everyone, but those who've done that inner work, it can be an incredible year. The 2026 is the ramp, and 2026 is the launch. 27 is the launch. And then I'm drawing a line after 2027. And because no one knows after that year what paradigm will be in this world, and I don't know. So I just have no idea. None of us really know. But these 2 years, an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, and I resonate with so much of that, Richard, truly, from the astrological point of view, because it's a thrilling opportunity, and for us to have landed in this lifetime and being given this opportunity is quite extraordinary. So see it from that excited point of view. And when you were talking about divine relationship, I think that's also a divine relationship with yourself. Because the inward process is really important in this, because it's going to get crazier out there at the 3D level. It's going to get crazy and loud and shouty and ridiculous. And so the more we need to turn inwards, and these simple principles of close your eyes, bare feet on the grass, listen to your heartbeat, listen to your breath, these simple principles, and your state of being your absolutely top priority, from which everything cascades. And I've said it many times, but it could not be more important, because you get into the habit of I'm living from the inside out, not the outside in. I'm living from joy, from peace, from love, what I decide, and I will dominate my day with those frequencies, and that will create my reality. And the more of us join together in our little bliss bubbles, then that really affects the collective reality as well. And so, yes, it's a mastery, because we've got to stop that kind of subconscious run of, it never works for me, I'm always a loser, look, something else has got you. It's just stop the grunge. Post-it notes around your house. What's your state of being? What are you thinking about? So when we get super clear, super focused, and say, I am going to go for this. And you're absolutely right, I think, Richard, from an astrological point of view, in terms of collective consciousness, because that's the Aquarian energy. and this mycelium, these tree roots coming together as a family of frequencies to support each other. And wealth and abundance will have a very different meaning going forwards. It will not be, as you say, your status, how big your car is, what your bank account numbers say. It will be how much love and joy do I have in my life. That will be what really counts going forward. Because, you know, if you think of indigenous people who lived so harmoniously with nature, they didn't have bank accounts to worry about or pay the gardener and the childminder. It was a complete sharing of an extended organic family where everybody cared for each other, everybody supported and loved each other. And this is the kind of energy we're moving towards, that kind of remembrance of ancient wisdom of the indigenous people that we still hold. We hold it in our DNA, we hold it in the cells, the water in our cells. And remember, it's the water that is also being upgraded, if you like, with all these high frequency energies of love coming in. So we are imbibing through the water things which are actually helping to elevate our biology at the same time as all of our simple practices as well. So just the key thing is keep your focus, keep your discipline, live in joy, live in love, live in peace, and things will just magnetize towards you into the vision that you're forming. It's almost like, I remember when I was buying that small house in France, and all around my kitchen I had photos of France and those electric blue colours, blue and yellow, typically French. And the little house I ended up buying, the pictures I had around my kitchen were almost like a photo of what I ended up magnetizing to me, manifesting. And so I think this is immensely exciting. And as Richard said, it really is the kind of the ramp to what we're going to see in 2027. And it's so interesting the way you've divided certainly 2026, because if I'm looking at it astrologically, we have this very important one-time conjunction at 0 of Aries between Saturn and Neptune. That is 044 of Aries. That hasn't happened for almost 6,000 years. And this is pure potentiality. This is the creator degree. And our future is going to be more unknown than it's ever been, because we've left the tram tracks now. And Richard doesn't know what our future will be. I don't know, because we are stepping into our co-creator role in a bigger way than we've ever done. But we're recognizing our spiritual sovereignty. And so therefore we have more latitude than we have ever had before, when we were living in more of a kind of victim psychology. And so February is a big deal. February 20th, 2026. And that's really about making real the dream, but taking action on making real the dream. And yes, absolutely, the collapse of the old order would continue. We have Uranus pretty much exactly conjunct a fixed star called Algol, which is about losing your head. So we've already started to see people in the public eye starting to leave the public eye very, very suddenly. Certainly in the UK, that's true. That will continue and accelerate. As Richard said, we just don't have the energy for that those old structures. And Uranus is in that position, or certainly now this month in November, all of January, all of February, and early March. And then we get into some very different energy, because at the end of April, 26th of April, Uranus on its 84-year cycle moves fully into Gemini until 2033. So all of the outer planets, Pluto's already there fully in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune fully into Aries, 20th of February, Uranus fully into Gemini, 26th of April. All of the outer planets are now in their new signs, and they're not moving back as they did in 2025.
And then we also have Atlas, right?
Yes.
Leaving the solar system in April.
Yes, it's apparently on the current speed and trajectory, 17th of April. But what's fascinating, and I only discovered this a few days ago, somebody very kindly sent this to me, on the 16th of March, when it's closest to Jupiter, before it starts to exit our solar system. Of course, Jupiter is about wisdom. Jupiter is about belief system. It's about expansion. It's about our future. But 16th of March is also the celebration or the consecration of what happened in 1244, March 16th, 1244, because 220 Cathars, men, women, and children, died in the fire at Montségur, the Cathar Castle, Montségur, which I've visited several times. And the Cathar people, and I feel it deeply in my heart, you might have heard the past life story, they represented the way of love. The way of love, and they were very persecuted at the time in the 1200s by the Catholics. You probably know this from history, and so March the 16th is a day of consecration of those who goosebumps sacrificed their lives for the way of love.
It's also, isn't it, the Ides of March?
The Ides of March.
It's a traditional date of warning, isn't it? Beware
Yes.
the Ides of March.
So those people who have tried to control others or persecute others, yes, absolutely. So that's the kind of echo that we are now leaving behind as Triatlas comes closest to Jupiter, and Jupiter's also about freedom, actually.
Yeah, and
it's a planet of freedom.
That old patriarchal energy is the energy of the dictator.
Yes,
like Julius Caesar,
the controller.
The first of the dictators.
Yeah.
That in Rome, he took. He was the first major dictator.
Yeah.
And then the whole line of dictators followed him, and right up until where we are now.
Yeah.
And so it's the ending of energy for that role. You know,
it's so incredible that day, and as I say, I only discovered this a few days ago, that very day, March the 16th, is so remarkable in the Cathar calendar. And the Cathars, of course, were at the time, I think, some of the purest people who they followed the way of love. They didn't kill to eat. They were very loving people. But they weren't in line with the beliefs of the Catholic Church, and the Catholics don't come that well out of those massacres, because it was actually a genocide of the Cathar people that you're probably familiar with. So it's so interesting. Yes, Jupiter is freedom. Jupiter is release. Jupiter is the future. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So. Yeah, it feels right on time in terms of divine timing.
Incredible object, this celestial object that's kind of this atlas that's moving through the solar system. Like, it's very inspiring, isn't it? Like this distant object that no one knows where it's come from or how far it's traveled or where it's going, but it just comes like straight through the heart of our solar system at this specific time, like a big. I see it like a big brush, like a big broom. It's two things. It's like a broom sweeping away the old, but as you said, it's also seeding all kinds of celestial energies here behind it, and then it's gone. And we were like, what the heck was that?
Yeah, and it's right on divine timing. Yeah. You know, the precision of it coming closest to Earth on the 19th of December, right on that winter solstice, is extraordinary. And several people I'm having conversations with, and Kelly Kolodny with Archangel Raphael comes to mind, particularly talking about the birth of a new galactic consciousness on December 21st.
Yeah, magical. A very magical December. In the world, I imagine pretty chaotic. I imagine there could be a ramping up of fear, and I want to reassure people that whatever it is that's happening externally, it's a manifestation of something that's happening on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just let all of that noise go. And I know it's extremely painful and heartrending if there's war and suffering to humans and children, adults, children, animals, all of it, nature, trees, forests, but try not to energize what is dying, and shift your consciousness to a higher level to say, no, I refuse to go on to the fear timeline. Love and joy are acts of defiance, and I'm committing to creating a higher octave of consciousness, because they're two very clear collective timelines. Now, eventually, we're all going to link up on the unity consciousness plane, chosen fast track or slow track, but commit to playing your part in keeping on the high consciousness timeline, because it really is fast and super exciting. It's interesting to me that in numerology, 2025 has been a 9-year of endings. And next year is a 1 year, 226 out of 10, then numerologists call that a 1. It's also the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology. And the fire horse is about freedom, independence, dynamic, bold moves, big jumps forward. And I think we are going to not only get waves of evolutionary consciousness and light coming in, but we ourselves individually and collectively are going to be making big changes, big, bold moves to change our lives. And what's fascinating about the way that Richard has divided his year up so far is it fits with what I'm seeing astrologically. You know, February, April, those final outer planets into their new signs. And then when we get into June and July, it's a real peak actually in the year astrologically, because we have Uranus square the nodal axis. And so what that means is that our collective soul's path of growth has to incorporate Uranus in a bigger way. Now that can have several expressions. It can be that we have to incorporate more truth coming to us, a bigger sense of awakening. It's a kind of jump. It's always quantum jumps in our energy, in our perception. It's never linear. It could be more galactic connection. Uranus, the outsider, the maverick, the foreigner, the galactic. And so it could be also quite revolutionary. This revolutionary energy is going to continue until 2035, but that doesn't have to be people on the streets with placards. It can be a revolution of choice. You choose self-employment if you can. You choose to shop at local farmers markets, not at supermarkets. You choose in whatever way you can to remove yourself from something that you don't feel is coherent to where you are at any longer. So it can be a revolution of choice. And then the big, June, end of June, Jupiter moves into Leo. And that's because that's very powerful as well. And all of June, the North Node is conjunct a fixed royal star called Fomalhaut, who is linked to Archangel Gabriel, who is about the spiritual teacher. So this sense of the spiritual is very strong. Chiron moves into Taurus, then stays in Taurus till September that year, 2026, moves fully into Taurus at the end of April 2027. So I think this will, because Chiron is the wounded healer, so it makes us aware of our shadows, of where we're still wounded, but also it's the healer. Taurus is our physical bodies, but it's also the earth itself, fixed earth. So this is going to make us more aware of, yes, our own shadows and where our wounds still lie, but also how we've wounded earth, how we've desecrated her, polluted her, toxified her. And so there will be much greater moves to heal our own wounds, but also heal the earth with all kinds of amazing new technologies, or maybe old technologies that are coming online, and high frequency light that's going to be very cleansing and purging. So I see that as incredibly positive. And boy, then when we get into July, that really is a peak time, because this unique astrological configuration I've been talking about with Pluto, Uranus in trine and Saturn, Neptune at the midpoint. Saturn has moved on by July, but Pluto, Uranus, Neptune at the midpoint, which is again a completely unique configuration, that reaches exactitude in July. It reaches its closest point where all three of those planets come together round about the 18th of July. But we're going to feel that right through the whole year. But that's the peak of exactitude. And this is about idealism, moving to a more perfect reality. It's about living in community. It's feeling very expansive in our consciousness. It's about major growth at that time, both personally and collectively. And also we have this incredible grand trine in fire that's happening on the 24th of July, very soon after the 18th. But as I say, the 18th of July will feel really throughout the entire year. So July is absolutely extraordinary. And it's about heart-based leadership, heart-centered leadership, that we're not being, it's leadership by inspiration and vision, not by domination. That's the real shift we're moving to. You being your own hero, not having an external savior, or you are your own hero. Much greater sense of egalitarianism as well. And so this sense of new horizons, of future dreams, compassion, authenticity, altruism, coming together, and a sense of cosmic consciousness. I think that Uranus in June, square to the nodal axis, is a sense of cosmic consciousness coming in very strongly, that we have a greater and greater sense of being part of a galactic family, which of course we always have been, but we haven't been aware of it. So, real peak time, June, July. And there's, a lot more detail I could fill in, but yes, very, very powerful.
Yeah, in the year begins with Uranus in Gene Key 8. And Gene Key 8 is really interesting, actually, because that key, the shadow of that key, is about imitation and it's about mediocrity. And if you think of AI, right, because it's an incredibly creative key, it's the key of the individual creative artist, the virtuoso, the genius inside each of us, incredible art, art maker, creator, right, that we're here to be. And Uranus, of course, has that energy very much inside it. So it's programming us, and a lot of the AI stuff that's out there is taking that away from us.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's also based on imitation. AI. I know it innovates, but it innovates through imitating.
Yes.
So it imitates
exactly.
and then innovates. So the deep creative source of each human being is it's not AIable.
Yeah.
And
not at all.
And so this is about us reaching much deeper into and becoming. I actually believe there's going to be the very beginnings of a creative renaissance coming next year.
Yeah.
And I really mean a creative renaissance, because I think there's going to be a retro movement against the AI.
Yes.
I 100% agree with that.
So the AI is going to bring a lot of stuff out, and the big corporations are going to be using it in all kinds of clever ways and targeting us, very specifically, because it's very good at that. And it's going to look like it's speaking your specific language, and that it can help you. And you can use it in that way as well. You can use it to help market your things, and you can get caught up in the whole game.
It's a mimicry.
The mimicry, yeah. And you can miss your own beauty, because Gene Key 8, it's the gift of style, and it's the city of exquisiteness. AI is never going to be able to deliver you your own exquisiteness. What is your own exquisite, beautiful thing you are here to transmit out? And that's why you've got to think about that this year, 2026. Think about, what is my highest gift? What is the most exquisite part of my soul I can bring to bear? And you don't have to do it all, but you can seed it next year. You can seed the vision of it.
Yes.
Perfect year for seeding a vision.
Yeah.
So don't put yourself under the pressure that you have to know or create it all in 1 year, but seed it, sow that in the soil of your consciousness. So it's imitation, and so it's continuing on. There's like the AI keeps us at a superficial level, right? Because it keeps us from going deep into our being. It keeps us on the surface of. I'm going to ask AI. It's wonderful, right? In certain things, it solves problems. It helps our life become easier. But I'm saying, as a tool that, as a creative tool, like it, you don't want to let it take away your creative impulse. And the 20th Gene Key is about what creativity really does. The creative resurgence brings us into the present. It's about presence. The presence of your soul, the presence of your higher self in the body. So it was never about the product, it was about the presence. That's what creativity is all about. It's not about the product. And AI is all about the product. I'm not anti-AI, but it is about the product, not the process. The process is what's so important.
Yeah.
Because the process is where the transformation is. So if you give it your transformation, for the sake of getting a product, you've missed your own transformation. Do you know what I mean? You've actually lost the beautiful transformational journey that has then led to you being a more awakened human being. So it's about not giving up that agency. And that's going to take a big, deep load of soul searching for many of us to not get caught out there in the periphery of life and consciousness and all the things that are going on and the exciting things. We can use it and we can be inspired by it, but it shouldn't become our North Star.
Yeah.
Our North Star is our soul, and our soul is in the body, and the body can't be sort of, you can't replicate this body. This is your body, and you've got to be embodied in it. And so that Gene Key 20 is really directing us into an embodied process next year, a creative embodiment, a renaissance. So I really feel like that there's going to be a backlash where people maybe return to things like handcrafts or more retro movements where you're actually doing right brain things, and instead of the left brain everything algorithms, we're going to do more embodied things, that bring us into the moment, whether it's working in your garden or on the earth or with animals, or, as you said, healing aspects of the earth, or local community, or growing food, or circular economies and close up community. That's the grassroots movement that's emerging, and beginning to emerge next year. So I believe one of the lines of the year actually is in my new Sage book is called Circular Economy. So it's really about like localizing your kind of bringing a local energy to what you're doing, so that you're really connecting to the environment that your body actually lives in.
And that was kind of acute centralization. Rich people at the top telling we poor peasants at the bottom what to do, and we're done with that. We're done with that kind of verticality in our socioeconomic structure. So Aquarian energy is the power shifting to the people, the power shifting to communities. Whereas the higher expression of Uranus, as Richard has been talking in my language, is the unique essence. It's your unique individuality, your unique essence in a way that you may not have ever known it so fully before. And it's an interesting mix, the Aquarian energy, because Uranus rules Aquarius, of a combination of discovering, maybe for the first time, your unique essence, recognizing that is your gift, but also wanting to put it back into the whole, into the community. So it's, yes, a more extreme understanding of your unique essence, but not just for you, but for all, putting it back into the community. So I think that's exactly how the astrology is playing out. And it's so interesting in June that Uranus square that nodal axis is going to be when we're really going to be feeling that very strongly. And this sense of embodiment, moving out of the head, and I frankly have been very heady. I've learnt my astrology in a very kind of mathematical, analytical way, and I'm going to have to shift big time into a different way of being, which is why I'm doing so much breath work, even more than I've done, and the shamanic course, to get myself into the body in a bigger way and out of this kind of very analytical mind that I've had up to now. So I have to be very disciplined and change my way of being. And I'm absolutely committed to doing that. So
I think it's a great example as well of what's required of everyone, like to really find out what is your inner commitment to your embodiment going to look like for you. You need to ask yourself that question and then really go deeply into it. Really, so even if it requires a bit of a risk on your part, you have to extend a bit more than you're comfortable to commit to that, whatever it is. That is a risk that you should take. Really.
Yeah. This is a one-time, incredible opportunity for you to really make a jump in your own evolution. It's only just like 3i Atlas. It's going to come around. It's only going to come around one time. It's not on a repeating orbit. And it's so interesting that 3i Atlas almost symbolizes that. This is a one-off.
And those of us who have done the preparation, and as those higher centers are opening up, we may start to remember or see in our mind's eye, through our third eye, some of that sacred knowledge that was lost to us.
100%.
And so really it may start returning into the collective higher mind in a mystical way. It may or may not appear on the outside. You can unlock more tombs or whatever, but I think we will unlock them on the inside. And what that made me wonder is also, so there's that opening on the inside, but then I was thinking about what the hell's going to be going on the outside, and I was remembering, that's probably like American elections ramping up, towards 2028, and I imagine that'll be a time of utter chaos. And it
feels so old.
On the outside, and there'll be AI elections, if you know what I mean.
It just feels old energy.
So old energy may be like really kind of, causing a lot of friction out there as it's beginning its serious decline. And I think it'll be more and more apparent to more and more people that this is a broken system.
Yeah.
It's like more and more people are going to be disillusioned, which is why you're going to get this grassroots movement appearing more. And the grassroots movements have always been invisible, right?
Quiet, loving.
Yeah, they're just quietly over here cultivating that meadow and opening up that farm and serving that community. And that's what we're going to have to be focused on. We're going to, like, the wings of the dragonfly open very tenderly, very delicate. Venus is an incredible creature, but it's delicate as well. And so you don't want to be sucked in by the declining energy of an old civilization that will carry on declining probably for decades.
Loudly.
Yeah.
Loud. That's going to be the loud stuff. So how is your life defined? Is it by the external moving inwards on you and feeling, that life happens at you? Or is it going to be very quietly, lovingly and peacefully that you're going to be living from the inside out? And as I say, this whole evolution could, if you're on the timeline of fear and look at the war and look at the tragedy and the awfulness and how the world's such a mess, you're not even going to notice probably this evolutionary path that's quiet smiles to strangers and helping neighbours with shopping and looking after your neighbour's child, or it's going to be quiet, loving, compassionate, peaceful. It's not necessarily going to be loud. In fact, it won't be loud. The loud stuff is the collapsing 3D.
Yeah, totally. And again, the creative renaissance.
Yes,
so
huge.
One of the things we're all going to be doing, everyone watching this video anyway, is we're going to be experiencing a rush of creative intelligence through our system that is going to be so inspiring that who knows what we can create with that energy. There's no limits to what we can create. And it's not about the product. It's not even about healing the world. It's actually just about allowing the process, because that's what it means to be a human, is to be a creator.
Yeah.
And you may create solutions to big problems, or you may just create a quiet little backwater garden somewhere, whatever your creative gift is. And it'll be collaborative, I think, more than it probably ever was.
Absolutely.
I think the days of the artist in the kind of closed-in studio may be numbered, because creativity is beginning to kind of move between our neurons. So it's moving between us collaboratively, because it wants us, the universal consciousness of that love wants us to be a creative collective. Because we're capable of so much more that way. So small groups of coherence, islands of coherence,
Absolutely.
Right?
What's that beautiful quote?
Yeah, small islands of coherence have a massive impact on systems.
Yeah.
Way more than you can.
And each of those can be one of those islands of coherence, or a small group of 2, 3, 4 people.
Yeah. And you see, take the world of business, for example, right? Small islands of coherent, kind of higher intelligence entering into the business world, which are already beginning. They've got little roots of that. That has a huge impact, because you're seeding divine truth. And if you've got divine truth on your side, it's going to move into the hierarchies and heterarchies, and it's going to find, it's going to work its magic.
I think it will work that way too. It isn't just the collapse of the old, it's the new consciousness coming through the old to some extent as well. And, I think even by 2027, we will be in a very different world, but that world is down to each of us right now, that we step into a sense of bigger co-creation and weaving with the astrological energy than we have ever had before. Become the co-creator, become the co-participant, become the co-producer. And we don't know what that currently blank canvas is going to look like by the end of 2027, but it's down to us, and how good can it get?